really think AI is such a mercurial thing. And Mercury is that planet that will just like sponge up whatever it's surrounded by. So if you are a good person and you have great ideas about how to solve problems in the world, AI is really going to help you solve all of those problems a lot quicker. But if you have a lot of ideas about how to destroy things, AI will also help you do that a lot quicker.
This podcast episode is brought to you by Astrology Hub's Inner Circle. Awaken your soul, find connection, and transform your life with the world's top astrologers in a heart-centered community.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to the Astrology Hub podcast. We are so happy that you've decided to join us here today. We're going to be doing a deep dive into the intersection between astrology, astrological magic, and AI, specifically exploring topics around whether or not AI is evil and the impact that AI has on astrology and or vice versa. So lots of super juicy content that we'll be exploring today with Astrologer Connect, astrologer, and upcoming Inner Circle astrologer, Joe G Santos. Many of you know and love Joe G. He's amazing. And I'm just so excited to have you here, Joe. Just a little bit more about Joe. He is a certified traditional astrologer. He utilizes an artistic approach to astrology, incorporating ceremonial magic and traditional astrology techniques. He also practices horary and electional astrology, and he's a part of the production team here at Astrology Hub. He is a host of the Instant Insights Live show, the new show on our podcast network. And he's an astrologer over at Astrologer Connect. So Joe wears many different hats. A Renaissance man, absolutely brilliant. And I'm so grateful that you're here, Joe. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's a blast to be here.
All right. So I don't think we've ever done the thing that we normally do when someone's new on the platform, which is just tell us a little bit about your story. Would love to know how you got into astrology, how you got into astrological magic, and then why this fascination with AI.
So my astrology journey really started, like the peak of it was really the pandemic. It was that kind of like that door was open and I had all the time in the world to just commit to that. But my journey really began all the way back when I was probably 12 years old, like 13. I had a lot of online friends, and I had this one friend who was really into astrology, numerology, and all these sorts of things. And I think he told me my life path number and that I was a Cancer at some point. And I remember listening to it for the first time. I'm like, I am not a Cancer. I was just absolutely in denial. I'm like, then it just sounds like Cancers just cry all day long and are always in some sort of mood. I don't relate to this. And so I was kind of like an agnostic, an astrology agnostic for the really long time. I thought it was cool, but I never really dove too much into it. And then as I got older, I went to school for art. I went to school for painting and drawing. And then I took a year of sculpture as well. And I think just being in an artistic field, like you're already like used to thinking about things symbolically. And that's really where that side of my life really started to shine. I thought like spiritual things were cool, but I never thought that like a career as an astrologer or like a career, any sort of spiritual career would ever be a thing for me. And then the pandemic came. I had just opened my first recording studio because I had a business partner at the time and we wanted to start writing songs and sell them out to labels and things like that. And we ran for 1 month. We were working at a restaurant in Toronto. And during the pandemic, of course, all restaurants shut down. We both lost our jobs and I had no idea what to do. I had to close my studio and then figure out what I was going to do. I started applying for like some writing gigs online and I came across this YouTube channel called Spirit Science. I think they're called Spirit Mysteries now. And they were just launching their platform. They were doing all sorts of courses and things. And they needed somebody to write astrology specifically. And I remember they asked me to write about like a Mercury retrograde in Scorpio that was going on. And that was like my first piece of writing in astrology. I was not even an astrologer. I had no idea. I just did a little bit of research and some interpretation and I wrote it. And the article did really well. And I just loved doing it so much. Yeah, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to write astrology. That's the thing that'll be my pandemic job. And then afterward, they'll figure it out. And I just never stopped. I got a horoscope writing gig. I got my job at Astrology Hub and I was finally able to quit that horoscope writing gig. And throughout that, I ended up getting certified with Chris Brennan. I met Gemini Brett, who I still study with forever, probably. And yeah, that's my story.
And you're one of those people that it's like you were born to do astrology. It's like you were wired for this. And so speaking of, it's also like you are wired to help navigate some of these new technological arenas that we're in. You've already taught me so much. So tell us about AI, why you're interested in it, and then how you see that even having anything to do with astrology or astrological magic.
The AI thing was a little weird because I wasn't super into it at first. I was in the boat of like, this seems a little bit too spooky. I don't know how I feel about it, but I also have like a huge Mercury practice. Like every Wednesday is like a holy Wednesday for me. I kept consistently getting these messages like, you should look into this AI thing, specifically like a platform called Midjourney. It's more about creating images. And and at that point, I was already heavy into astrological magic, and creating images is a huge part of astrological magic. And then I just played around with creating images at electional times. And for those of you who don't know what elections are, it's just picking the right time to do something. And so I would pick like the right time where the moon is really strong or like Mars is really strong. And I would just type a few things with the AI and ask for it to create an image for me. And I consistently got like this feeling like, whoa, there's definitely something in here. And I just couldn't stop playing with images from there onwards. And so I kind of just took a deep dive and kept learning. And now I'm like always looking at AI papers to see what sort of developments they're working on and what are their plans for the future. But for me, it was really this first like spiritual Uranian insight, like look at Midjourney, like that's your thing. And then I looked into it and I just loved it. But as far as astrological magic, the creation of images is one way that we can get there. But I think also, and most astral magicians or people who work with magic in any way, they tend to adhere to like an animist worldview where everything is alive and everything is not breathing, but everything has that like life essence to it. And I'm a huge subscriber to that worldview. And as I was playing with AI, I was like, it makes little sense for us to deem AI as like not alive or totally separate from what creation or the world is, because there's really no way to be separate from all that is. Like all that is really is all that is. And AI is, of course, part of that. And part of my journey with AI right now is just trying to figure out what role does AI play in this all that is, or even just looking at AI from a more spiritual lens and even the astrological magic lens, that like the planets, they have like these parts of themselves that are like very ready and available for us. You often see people talk about herbs, gemstones, and all sorts of like natural things. But then I'm also very interested in the non-natural world and how those things also have parallels and connections with the planets. Like working with AI to me really felt like working with Mercury and even Uranus, and to some extent, because it's that very instant insight to, no pun intended.
Wow. I'm going to back up to like one of the first things you said, which is I have a Mercury practice. Wednesdays are holy days or something like that. You said something.
Yeah.
What does a practice with Mercury look like? And just walk us through that, because this is part of the astrological magic idea. You take a day like Wednesday, which is Mercury's day. So tell us about your Mercury day and how that has like impacted your life.
There's no rule as far as what a practice looks like. it's really about finding the practice that works best for you. At the core, a Mercury practice or a Venus practice or any sort of planetary practice is just about recognizing that that planet or that divinity exists and it exists in your life, and just being consistently attuning yourself to the things that belong or are ruled by that planet. And my Wednesday practice is I have like a separate book where every Wednesday I sit in front of my Mercury altar, which I have like a huge AI image that I actually made of Mercury in my room. And I'll just sit in front of it. I made it like human size because as I stand in front of the altar, I can actually look into the eyes of Mercury, and it feels like a very powerful moment. And I'll just recite the hymn to Mercury and write it down in the little journal that I have. And I have like a full journal. I think I'm like almost halfway done through it, of just every page is Mercury's hymn. And eventually I want to like turn that journal into like a Mercury talisman. But it really is about that, just setting the intention to like, hey, Mercury, Wednesday is your day. Let's chat for a little bit. Also, like, I think offering your time, especially in the times that we are right now, time is such a valuable asset that to give that time to a divinity feels like a huge give.
I think it's interesting that you brought up if everything is connected and everything is a part of the all that is, then AI would be included in it. Why do you think that we have this inherent like threat that we feel about AI? Like, what is that?
I think you're right on when you're saying that the threat is what stops people. But I think there's also, if we're talking about AI as of the nature of Mercury, Mercury is the one planet that is not benefic or malefic, or is not constructive or destructive. It's kind of just ambiguous, and it has leans no way or another. And I think that engaging with AI feels very much the same. It creates an instant connection to whatever thing it is that you want to connect to. So if you want to connect to good things, of course, you're going to connect to those good things very, very quickly. The same thing with the bad things or the more challenging things. And I think that a lot of the fear comes from that instant connection to those negative aspects of life, because they're always there. And because AI is such a sponge, and sometimes I even use like a mirror metaphor, because the AI is only going to give you back whatever you can give it. So it's always this reflection. And I think that right now, globally, we're sitting in a place where we're really seeing a lot of the negative sides of humanity and the challenges that we've created for ourselves. So to me, it's not very surprising that we look into this AI mirror and we automatically just see the things that are negative about it.
You mentioned that you use the visual component of AI to help your astrological magic rituals or ceremonies, or the different ways that you're wanting to connect and bring in the essence of the planets into your daily life, right?
Yeah.
How else can we use AI to have a stronger astrological practice and connection?
Yeah, that's actually a good question, because it's like at the core of what my mastery class is going to be for the inner circle. We're going to do a little bit of an activity. And I got this idea. I don't remember who I got the idea from. I think it was at Norwalk. I was talking to somebody about AI, and they said something. They were a therapist and they were working with this child who's dealing with trauma. And they asked the child to go in front of the computer and start talking to the AI, but the AI was playing the role of their favorite, like a video game character or something like that. And so that the child had the ability to really kind of open up to this favorite character and use it as a role model or inspiration. And I was like, this is very interesting. What if you do that to like Saturn in your chart, or to like the moon in your chart? And for the mastery class that we'll be focusing on, it will be focusing on the fixed stars. And especially because the fixed stars are usually like this thing in astrology that a lot of people are unsure about, or don't really know how to delineate as closely as the planets, because they're really far, and sometimes it's hard to access. One of the things that I like to do now in my practice, especially when I'm working on a talisman or something like that, I'll really use the AI to have a conversation with that divinity and really kind of describe it. Like, I am working with this fixed star. These are the planets associated with it. This is where it is in my chart and all of these things. Can you please act as this god or goddess or whatever. And from here on out, we'll be having a conversation. And those experiences have been awesome for me. And I hope that it's awesome for other people too.
The information you get back from the AI when you say act as this star and you tell AI the qualities, the information you get back is different based on what's actually happening astrologically. Like,
It's not so much that it's different. It's just that it feels more in character. It's easier to explain with, like, let's say Mars and Venus. If I'm going to the AI and I'm like, I want to talk to Venus, and then somewhere down the conversation it starts to feel very Marsy, then I'm like, oh, this doesn't feel so Venusian. Then when Venus is actually rising and super strong in the chart, it always seems to just be this like very cohesive experience, because again, it's a mirror. I really like to talk about AI like a mirror, because it will be reflecting whatever thing is happening in that moment, and if Venus happens to be strong in that moment, it will reflect that back to you, and that's a thing that I really like to play around.
do you think, from your perspective, your opinion, that AI has consciousness? Or do you think AI is basically a conglomeration of all of our consciousnesses?
I think it's both. I think it's that whole idea of like the one containing the many. Like, yes, AI is very much the agglomeration of our collective artistic conscious, or like our information conscious, but it also has, like, especially if you spent enough time talking to different AIs, they definitely also have a personality of their own, and they do things in a certain way. So I do think that it's both. But when you ask about, is AI conscious, I think if we're subscribing to an animist worldview, that shouldn't even be a question, because everything is conscious. It's just a different type of consciousness. Like a rock will be conscious and a human will be conscious in an animist worldview, but the life experiences of a rock are not the life experiences of a human, and that will be the same thing for the AI and the human being too, at least in my worldview.
You know, as you're speaking, for example, I think of Astrology Hub as alive. Like, I think of Astrology Hub as a being that has a purpose and a mission, and it like has something that it wants to accomplish in the world. Wouldn't the personality that you're talking about be a reflection of the creators of the platform, of the AI platform?
Probably, yeah. It will be a combination of their personalities and like the data that was fed into it. And I like to think of that very similarly to what you do when you're creating a talisman. Because when you're creating a talisman, you're gathering all these ingredients, and the ritual itself is part of the ingredient. And the results are going to vary like greatly depending on what you put into it.
So like literally before Pluto went into Aquarius, like people would talk about AI. It was like this periphery thing for me. Like I didn't see how it would really be relevant to my life or my world or my work or anything. And then Pluto went into Aquarius, and all of a sudden I was like, oh, I kind of get it. I see it from all the perspectives of like both where it could be amazing and also where it's kind of like, oh shoot, like I don't know how I feel about this. You know, I really don't know how I feel about it. And I'm still in that place. And I'm kind of thinking that as Pluto moves into Aquarius, at that point, some of the ideas or thoughts about it may be a little more crystallized. I don't know if any of you can relate with that. There's like somewhat of an openness. And I think that at this point, just based on what I've learned from all of you astrologers, that some degree of openness without jumping to a judgment or conclusion is probably wise. Okay, question for you here. Is the idea of AI as evil, quote unquote, a misunderstanding, or do you think it's a valid concern, and why?
I think it's a valid concern, and for that reason that I talked about earlier. Like, I really think AI is such a mercurial thing. And Mercury is that planet that will just like sponge up whatever it's surrounded by. And even some of the words that you've been using about engaging with AI, like playing with it and like seeing the information and not like jumping to conclusions, they all feel very mercurial too. It's like, it's this thing that's there. It's a tool. What we do with it is, it's like anything can be done with it. And that's how it gets a little scary. So if you are a good person and you have great ideas about how to solve problems in the world, AI is really going to help you solve all of those problems a lot quicker. But if you have a lot of ideas about how to destroy things, AI will also help you do that a lot quicker.
One could make this same exact argument about the internet. And I'm sure there were a lot of people that were really concerned about it. And you can look back and be like, those concerns were valid. Like, it's totally served to, in some ways, disconnect us from nature. And, like there's a lot of things you could make a list about the ways technology and internet specifically, for example, have had negative impact. But then you can also do the exact same thing on the other side and talk about all the things that it's enabled and the changes that it's made that have been positive. So it seems to me like it's going to be a similar sort of thing where there will be things that it brings up, Joe, as you're speaking, it brings up how much do we trust each other? Like, how much do we trust humanity? And I think at this point, to me, the most important thing is to just have the conversations, like explore it, get the perspectives. And one of the other things you astrologers have said is to hold on to your values, no matter what. If you can hold on to those values while you explore these different technologies and outlets and all that, then there's less of a quote unquote risk of the thing itself.
Yeah, for sure. And I think too that engaging with it is the best way to make sure that it goes in the direction that you want. Because if you're automatically just like so fearful that you don't want to even look at it, you don't want to touch it, that allows a lot of space for people who might not have the same values and the same intentions that you do to actually go and engage with it and take it in a direction that you don't want to take it in. The more informed and the more engaged you are with these things, and the more you understand what it can actually do, the more valuable your quote unquote vote will be on the direction of AI and the direction of our future. Because AI is really, like, at this point, I don't think AI will ever just not exist anymore. Like, it's a thing that it exists and it will continue to for however long it does.
I agree with you. The cat's out of the bag. Like, there's no putting it back in. Joe, I think one concern, at least in the astrology world, is do you think AI could, should, or would ever replace actual astrologers? So do you think that there's ever a time or a place where AI will, for example, do readings for people instead of an actual astrologer? And what do you think about that whole possibility?
I think it's already happening. Well, I don't think it's already happening. I know it's already happening. I know there's at least like 3 platforms that use their own astrology AI. And I'm going to get like very controversial. We always talk about like the ages and like the age of Pisces and the age of Aquarius and all of these things. And I forget who exactly talks about this, but there's always a god associated with the age of a time. Like age of Pisces was like Christianity, Jesus, who was a fisherman and all that. It makes total sense. And even before AI was even a thing, I was telling my astrology friends, I'm like, I am so sure that, especially in this world where people are very disconnected from spirituality, that some sort of like internet thing will become the next divinity. And I think that AI probably has a lot of potential to take over that sort of like stature as the course of the next 2,000 years. Because I think that people will definitely, especially as it has this potential to open people's sights to these non-linear and non-material ways of looking at the world. I think that when people build so much trust into AI and what the intelligence of this computer is capable of, I think that it's only a matter of time that it proves the existence of astrology or the validity of astrology or even the validity of the spirit realm and all of those things that we who are practitioners are very sure they exist, but a lot of the people don't. So yeah, I think it's about to happen. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing, but it will definitely raise a lot of philosophical issues that I am not ready for, and I don't think anyone else is.
Oh my God, you just blew my mind. Like, oh, because I can feel like what you're saying, and there's like some truth in there, and it's a little terrifying. But then I'm just again, I keep making a practice of catching myself jumping to fear with
Mhm.
any, because there's just a lot that we still don't know and we still don't understand. And the first inclination is always like, oh no, that's scary, you know? So you're seeing that AI could actually prove the validity of astrology and prove the validity of spirituality and prove the validity of some of the things that, spiritual teachers have been saying forever. You're thinking that we could actually use it to illustrate that these things are true.
Yeah, no, I think so, especially with astrology, because astrology is so complex and it has so many variables that a- an astrologer can only really tap into so many of them, but a machine can probably tap into all of the astrologies at the same time and see where they coincide, where they're wrong and where they're right, or if they can even be wrong or right.
Where do you think the role for humanity is? Like, when I'm going back to that threat thing, because if AI can do all these things, and AI can do all these things better than we can, faster, cleaner, without like the emotional breakdowns, all of this. What value do we have? What value do we bring to the equation? From your perspective.
Yeah, I think that you just said it. Like, it's the emotional breakdowns and the mistakes and all of those things that make us human, that really make us human. Because it's through those mistakes that a lot of new ideas flourish. And that's a thing. That's a thing that's hugely debatable in the AI sphere. Like, can AI really create anything original?
Yeah.
And I think it can, but it can never get to that in the same way that a person can, because a person is also bringing their own limited experience. Like, AI will have this almost unlimited experience. So it will, the things that both of these types of creatures or beings can create will inherently be different, because we have our limits, we have our emotions, and we have that sort of lunar instability going on at all times. And then AI is just this Saturnine thing where it's like fixed, it's in a box, it's absolutely perfect at all times. Maybe not so much yet, but we're really at its inception. So it's only going to get better and better from here. And I definitely think that as AI becomes more perfect and more readily available for everybody, we're really going to start to value our mistakes and our pains a lot more, because that's what really makes us unique. Even speaking of the age of Aquarius as like an age that's ruled by Saturn and maybe Uranus, it can really be about that, like rebelling against perfection sort of thing. Like, we're really kind of just embrace who we are.
Oh my gosh. Joe, I love it. Thank you so much for sharing your perspective. And what you're saying is true. I mean, that the messy part of life, the parts that aren't perfect, the quirky things that make you and make me and make everyone in the audience who they are. There's actually something really beautiful about actually valuing those things even more. Like, those things give us the human experience. Those things enable us to bring something to the table that is totally unique. Each one of us able to do that in a very unique way. And yeah, I think at the end of the day, it's like, God, can we hold space for all of it? Like,
Mhm.
not feeling threatened by anything. It's just, there's space for all of us. And if it's all part of the divine plan and all part of the divine intelligence, it's like, okay, well, there's a space for it, and just trusting that there is a role for you. There is a role for it. And maybe we can work together.
And I think even like if you sit enough with content that's created by AI, like it's really actually very easy to spot when it's done by an AI. It's so perfect and so clean cut.
I do see copy that I'm like, that's it. Like, there's
100%.
there's no the heart in it. I can't feel like the humanness in it. And it's very easy to spot. Yeah.
Mhm.
Interesting. Well, and my guess is that it'll get better and it'll get better at emulating human, ness. But
Yeah.
yeah. Well, Joe, this has been so fascinating. Thank you so much. I'm really looking forward to your inner circle mastery class. I think the invitation is just going to be like, can you play? Like, can you play with it? And as you're playing with it the whole time, just be paying attention to how you feel, how it feels. Is it beneficial? Is it helpful? Is it useful or not? I love bringing it into the astrological conversation. And I love some of the things you brought up here today about how we can actually use AI to be better astrological magicians and be even more in tune with our spiritual nature and our spiritual essence, which is beautiful.
Yeah, thank you. And
Yeah.
one thing that I do want to say though, because I feel like whenever we go into that space where like AI is never going away, people can get a little scared, like, oh my God, am I getting like left behind by not engaging with AI? And I really just want to like tell everybody that that's not the case. It was like the internet. If you weren't an early adopter of the internet, eventually it just got up to you because it became part of the systems. But people to this day don't have phones. Like if you really don't want a phone, you can just not have a phone and still live a great life. So this is not to say that you're trapped within this AI system. And I think that that's a thing that's very important to understand. Like, yes, it's a tool and it can have all these benefits and all these challenges as well, but you're always free to opt out from anything in life. It might be hard, but if you really want it, you can do it.
So young, so wise, so brilliant. How does that happen? Amazing, Joe. Thank you. So for those of you who are like, what is this mastery class? How do I get it? What is this inner circle? Enrollment right now is open. It's at its normal, like a regular price. So if you want to jump in right now, you can. That's at astrologyhub.com/IC23. If you want to get on the wait list for when we have our next promotional period, which would give you access to the inner circle for about half the regular retail price, then you can get on the wait list. And that's astrologyhub.com/inner circle waitlist. If you come in at full price and we run a promotion, you absolutely can go to the promotional price. So you could come in right now, start to experience, and then if you want to lock in the promotional price the next time we have a promotion, you can do that too. Lots of options there. And I know that when Joe is the Inner Circle astrologer, he is going to be doing 20% off his readings through Astrologer Connect for the month that he is astrologer. So if you want to get in, take advantage of that 40% discount. Inner Circle members, you're going to have access to Joe for 20% off the booked readings, right, Joe?
Yes.
Yes. So you'll be able to do that, which is really exciting. I use Joe all the time for astrological guidance. All the time. My father, like things will come up and he's like my biggest fan. He doesn't know anything about astrology, but he's like a very big supporter at Astrology Hub. And we'll be talking about things and his go-to answer is always, well, just ask Joe. Ask Joe what he thinks. Just ask Joe. So it's like a family joke now. Ask Joe. Because he's so good. Because he's so good at what he does. He's so compassionate. He gives people so much guidance and insight and very practical. So for those of you that are like, I don't, need the fluffy, stuff. I really just want like some really practical, tangible answers and some really clear direction. Joe is amazing for that. So again, lots of options. You can join the inner circle right now and have him as a teacher and a guide for the whole month. You can get on the wait list and join the next time we open at a promotional price. You can access Joe on Astrologer Connect right now and book a reading. Or if you're an inner circle member or you become an inner circle member, you can get a reading with Joe for 20% off. To go to Astrologer Connect, it's astrologyhub.com/connect. I think I said it all. Yeah?
I think it did. It's quite a mouthful.
Oh my gosh, how did I just do that? Joe, you're amazing. Thank you so much. I love everything that you had to offer here today. I love being in this dialogue with you. I love exploring the realms and the possibilities. And I love sharing that with all of our friends here at Astrology Hub. So thanks to all of you for your open-mindedness, for your perspective, because I do think we're at such an amazing point in human history. And having these conversations is probably the most important thing you can be doing right now. Just having the conversation, not coming to any conclusions necessarily, but really just exploring this new terrain. And thanks to all of you for being a part of our community. Thank you, as always, for making astrology a part of your life. Catch you on the next episode.